Alright, welcome back to the Crabby Dice. Today we're going to be taking a look at St. Petersburg 2nd edition. So this is an awesome card drafting tableau building game. Now there really is no theme to this game, it's really mechanical, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game, alright? So this is going to be the setup and rules breakdown video. Click the link below if you want to see my review and playthrough video. And like usual, before we start, please like, subscribe, and comment on my YouTube channel, that'll be great. Let's go. Alright, let's deal with the setup. But before we do, a little bit of a caveat here. I'm not going to be showing you any of the special modules in the game box here. Go to the end of this video, I'm going to show you each of those special modules, how to set it up, and what the rules are. Alright, what I am going to do though is I'm going to set up the brand new edition of St. Petersburg, which includes the market, which is this side of the board. If you don't want to play with the market, flip this board onto the other side and just set it up as if it was the base St. Petersburg game. Now, I'm going to show you how to set it up with and without the market as we go. Alright, so first, lay out your game board on the side that you want to play. Next, shuffle up all your decks and place them in their respective spots on the board. Now, for the market side up, you are going to play with a yellow deck. If you're playing the other side, don't play with the yellow deck. Make sure to shuffle all these cards really well. Now, let's take care of this market side over here. If you're not playing with this, don't worry about it. But the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take all these tiles and you're going to put them in numerical order. So use the number on the left. Alright, sort them, leave them face up, and then put them back on the top of the board. Each player is going to put 5 of their discs next to the market board over here. It's going to track how many goods they have of each type. And then you're going to have the rest of the market tiles, just leave them close by. The players are going to grab these. Alright, you can put your money on the side of the board. Alright, now for the player pieces, pretty simple. You're going to hand each player 2 meeples. One of them is going to go on the score track and the other one's going to go in front of them just to indicate what color they are. Alright, you're going to hand each player $25. Alright, and pretty much the last thing you need to do for setup is you're going to take all these wooden symbol tokens. Alright, if you are not playing with the market, just don't play with this one. But you know, what I like to do is just shuffle them up and just hand these out randomly to all the players. If you're playing 5 players, give 1 to each player. If you're playing 4, 1 player is going to have 2. Playing 3, 2 players are going to have 2. And if you're playing 2, and so on and so on and so on, right? So just shuffle these up and just hand them out to the different players. Alright, these are going to pretty much indicate who's going to be the start player for each of these phases, and you're going to see they match the icons on the back of the cards. And there you go, that's the setup. Let's go to rules. Alright, rules overview time here for St. Petersburg. So like I mentioned in the intro, this is a pure tableau building game. So mostly what you're going to be doing in this game is you're going to be taking cards from the main display over here, paying their cost, adding them to your tableau, and you're doing that for various reasons. They're going to be giving you income, giving you points, special abilities, and so on and so on. Okay. Now, the way the game is structured, alright, because it's important to know this, is you're playing in rounds, but there is no real number of rounds you're going to play till it's triggered. Alright, so I'm going to show you how this works. Is a round consists of these 5 phases, and each phase is considered one of these decks of cards. They all have a name, but I'm just going to call them by colors throughout this video. So you have green, yellow, blue, red, and the exchange cards over here. So one round consists of doing one of each of these phases, and you're always going to be doing them in the same order from left to right. Alright, and how the end game gets triggered is when one of these decks run out. Alright, you're going to finish off the round and then go to end game scoring. So let's say we run out of blue cards. Alright, you're still going to finish off the blue phase, you're going to do the red phase, then the exchange phase, and then you're going to go to end game scoring. Alright, so that's how the game sort of flows and how the game ends. Alright, now the way I'm going to teach you the game is we're going to first learn what the anatomy of a card is, what the player actions are. Then I'm going to do sample turns and go through each of the decks of cards and talk about all the rules that pertain to each of those decks of cards. Then we're going to come back at the end to talk about end game scoring. Alright, so let's go. Alright, so let's look at the anatomy of a card quick. This is going to be pretty simple. The cost of the card is always written in the top left of the card. Alright, so for example here, it'll cost you $14. You're going to pay the bank, and then you'd add this card to your tableau. Alright, the bottom of the card is what the benefit is for the card. Alright, so this card is going to give you coins every time you finish a red round and some points. Alright, and each of the cards in the game works the exact same way. Some of them have special abilities. You can look in the book to read what the special abilities are. Alright, now let's talk about player actions. So in this game, when it's your turn, you have a possibility of 1 of 4 different actions, and that's about it. Alright, and they're all pretty simple. So the first action that you can do is buying a card from the main display and adding it to your personal tableau. Alright, and like I mentioned, you're going to pay the cost in the top left and then add the card to your tableau. Alright, now there are ways to get discounts in this game, and I'm going to mention it right now. There's essentially 3 ways. If you buy a card from the second row of the tableau here, you're going to get a discount of 1, as you can see on the board. Alright, if you have cards with the exact same name as one that you already have in the tableau, you'll get a discount of 1 per card. So for example, if you have a lumberjack and you bought another lumberjack, you'll get another discount of 1 for every lumberjack that you buy. All right. And the third discount way is with the exchange cards, but we'll explain that later when we talk about that whole deck. Okay, so that's your first action, taking a card, adding it to your tableau. All right, the second action you can do is taking a card, but adding it to your hand. All right, so this is cards in your hand, you can play it later. All right, and the reason you might want to do that is if you don't have the coins, or you don't want to spend the coins right now to play the card, but you want to play it later, you can add it to your hand. Now in this game, you have a strict hand limit of 3. There are some cards that will increase your hand limit, but it will be 3 for most players throughout the game. All right. Now the third action you can do on your turn is playing a card. All right. So on a future phase or future round, if you have cards in your hand, on your turn as an action, you can actually play this card to your tableau by paying the cost now. All right. You're going to pay the cost on the card, and you're going to pay the bank and add this card to your tableau. Okay. And the fourth possible option is passing. All right. And that's how a phase ends. When everyone passes in sequential order, then we're going to end the phase. But if you pass and other players are still doing actions and it comes back to your turn, well, you're not out of the round just yet. You can still do actions. All right, so let's say I passed and then Bob did something and Jill did something. Well, when it comes back to my turn, well, then I can still do an action. The round only ends when we all pass in sequential order. All right, now that you know the anatomy of a card and what your actions are going to be, I'm going to teach you the game by going through the flow of a round. All right, now one thing that I did forget to mention is the reasons why we have these sort of wooden tokens is because these represent who the first player is going to be during that phase of the game. All right, so during the worker or green phase, whoever has this token is going to be the first player, and you always play clockwise from that player. At the end of a round, we're going to sort of shuffle these around, but we'll get to that later in the video. All right. So now let's talk about the structure of a phase. Pretty simple, all right? You're always going to follow the same 3 steps. First step is filling up the tableau with new cards. Second step is players are going to do their actions, and remember that you finish the second step when everyone passes in sequential order. And then finally, step 3 is scoring only that color of card for the phase that you're in. So if you're at the end of the green phase, you're going to score your green cards. At the end of yellow, your yellow cards, and so on and so on. During the red phase, the red cards. All right, during the actual exchange phase, you don't do any scoring whatsoever. You're going to skip that step, but we'll get to that much later. All right, so that's how essentially each phase is going to go until the end of the round. Now, very special phase and round during the first worker phase of the game. All right, this is something very special that you only have to do once. All right, it's almost like a pre-draft, let's say, for your first workers. All right, for the beginning of the game, when you're taking out your worker cards, what you're going to do is instead of filling up your tableau of 10 cards, all right, you're only going to put out in the display the number of cards equal to the number of players times 2. So in a 3-player game, you're going to take 6 cards off the top of the deck and put them in the display. All right, and during this special phase, the only action that you can do is buying cards and adding them to your tableau. All right, so you can't take them to your hand, and you can't play cards from your hand, obviously, because you don't have any, and you can't pass. All right, so just as an example here, let's say red is first player. They would take this card, pay 3 to the bank, and add this to the tableau. Let's say I would pay 3, pay to the bank, add it to my tableau. Then the next player would pay 3, add the lumberjack, add it to the tableau. Let's say the next player paid this, and then would circle back to red. So remember, the only action that you can do is buying cards. So now as my next card, maybe I'll buy this card. Now I'm going to talk about this during the yellow phase, but some of the cards do have an icon in the top right. This only comes into play if you are playing with the market side of the board. Ignore these icons if you're playing just the regular side of the board without the market. All right, but I would raise myself up on the goods track according to the icon, and then I would add this card to my tableau. All right, what I like to do is stack up all my green cards together because they're all gonna get activated at the same time, and show their names, because remember, you do get a discount if you have multiple cards with the same name. All right, then let's say the next player will get this, and then the next player would get this. All right, that would end the special phase. You're still gonna activate the scoring of that phase. So remember, at the end of each of these phases, you're still gonna score. And the way you score is pretty simple. You're gonna look at all the cards that you have of that color and gain the benefits. So in this example here, pretty simple. I'm gonna gain 6 coins from the, or $6 from the general supply and add it to my personal supply. All right. Okay, now pretty easy note for the green deck, every single card just gives you 3 coins. All right, that's why this deck is pretty simple. The only added wrench that they throw in is some of them do give you goods in the top right, but essentially here you're just paying for money in future rounds. All right, so after that special first phase, first round of the game, every other phase works exactly the same way. You're always going to follow the same 3 steps. You're going to fill up the display to 10 cards if you're playing market side board up to 8 cards if you're playing on the other side of the board. Second, everyone's going to do their actions. Just like I mentioned previously, you had 4 different actions, you're going to do them. All right, and the third thing is you're going to score that color at the end of that phase. So in this example here, at the end of the yellow phase, you're going to score your yellow cards. All right. Now let's talk about only this market deck, which are the yellow cards. And keep in mind, this only exists if you're playing with the market side board up. If you're playing the other side, this doesn't exist. This is only part of the second edition of St. Petersburg. All right. So again, I've already put out the cards in the display over here. So you fill up to 10 cards every single time, which is done. And then you're going to do your actions. So players are going to go around the table doing their actions, starting with the first player, which again, player with that token that matches that deck of cards. So let's say red is first player, and let's say they wanted to buy this card. They would pay the cost, pay the bank, add this card to their tableau. And let's look at the anatomy of a market card. All right, so each market card, all right, kind of unique, always is going to have the goods in the top right of the card, and this indicates how many steps up the market track you're going to go for that good. So by adding this card to my tableau, I'm going to look here, I'm going to go twice on the fish track. All right, we're going to talk about this later during the scoring of yellow, but we're going to score extra points. All right, and you're going to notice that they're also going to give you coins as income, and this is going to happen during the scoring as well. Let's just add this card to our tableau. All right, then the next player is going to go. So just like a regular turn, let's say they would have taken this, they're going to pay the bank. Remember, you always pay the bank. You're going to go up on the track indicated here. So let's say yellow would have gone up on the cabbage, and so on and so on. Then green would go. Let's say green would all go on the wheat track, and so on and so on. You would go till everyone passes. So let's just hand out some random cards here. All right, and let's say everyone passes and we're done. All right, so that would end step 2, and then you're going to go through the scoring. All right, before I talk about scoring, the only special card that exists in the yellow deck is this orange card. All right, this is a special card. All right, you can see on the card that it doesn't give you any income, but what it does give you is 4 steps up any of the tracks here indicated by the icon in the little basket here. So in this case, if I would have bought this card for 1, well, I'm going to go up 4 steps on the wheat track. So let's say it was green. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now this card is special. I'm going to talk about it during scoring, but you sort of have to pay an upkeep to keep this card, but let's just give this to green for now. All right, now let's score a yellow. So scoring yellow, you're going to do in 2 steps. All right, the first step is just like green. You're going to look at all your yellow cards and you're going to get income. So in this case here, I will get 1 coin from the bank, so $1, and add it to my personal supply. All right, when everyone's done that, you're going to go to step 2. Step 2 is scoring the market board. All right, before you do step 2, like I had mentioned, these orange cards, you do have to pay an upkeep. You do need to pay the cost equal to the number on the left of the current scoring track of the market to keep this card in your tableau. All right, because these are pretty powerful. They give you massive jumps up on the market track, and they're going to end up scoring you a lot of points, but you do have to pay an upkeep. So in this case over here, since it's the first round of the game, green's going to have to pay $1 to the bank. Let's get that dollar. All right, to keep this card in front of him, and he would keep his jumps up on the market board. All right, because in this game, whenever you lose a card or cover up a card, you're going to lose the status of that card. So in this case, if I didn't want to pay the upkeep for this anymore, you would move back 4 steps up on the market board, but he wanted to keep it, so that's fine. So in a future round, just to give you an idea, they would have to pay 4 gold or $4 to keep that card in their display. All right, and next you're going to score the board. All right, so the way this works is you're always going to have 2 numbers. All right, the left number is for the person who's highest on each of the tracks, and the second number is who's second. All right, so in this, let's just score this random sample over here. So chicken, nobody will get any points. For wheat, green will get 1 point. So you move up on the point track. All right, for apples, green would also get a point and nobody's in second place. All right, for fish, red would score a point. All right, and for cabbage, both red and yellow would score the first place point because they're tied for first, so they would both get a point. All right. Now, what happens on a tie for second place? Or let's say there was a tie for first and there's a second. So let's say in this scenario here, both yellow and red would score first place, but nobody would score second place. All right, but in this scenario here, red would score 4 and both green and yellow would score 2. And that's how this market board is scored. The last thing about markets are there are these tokens on the side of the board over here. Pretty simple to understand. There's the ones with the 10. These are just if somebody manages to go past 10 on the track, well then they'll take the plus 10 token and put it out in front of them. For example, if green went to 12, well then they would have this in front of them to indicate that they have 12 wheat and not just 2 wheat. All right, so you have one of each of the different types of goods. And the other tokens out here are just the regular tokens, and there's only 5 because there are exactly 5 cards in the game that have a question mark in the top right. All right, and what happens is when you put one of these cards in the tableau, you go to the tokens that are currently available, take it, put it on top of the card, and then add it to your tableau, and then you'll go up on the track. So for example, if green took this card, they'll go up once on the chicken track because they put a chicken icon. The next person to take a question mark card, well now the supply has dwindled down, they have a choice of only 4, and so on and so on. So the fifth person to take one of these cards will have no choice, they will just take the last token that is available. Alright, so now that you know how the sort of phase is structured, they're all going to be exactly the same like the market phase that I just mentioned. Alright, so 3 steps. First step is going to refill the sort of display up to 10 cards. So we had 3 cards carried over, it could be any number of cards, but you're going to add until you have 10 on the display. So here we added 7 blue cards because we are doing the blue phase. Alright, second step is players are going to do their actions. Remember, you're going to always start with the person with the current token of that round or that phase, and they're going to start first, and then you're going to be buying cards. So this is going to be exactly the same thing. One of the 4 actions, you either buy a card, put it in your hand, put it in your display, play a card from your hand, or pass. Alright, so let's say all of these were taken. And then you're going to go to scoring. And scoring for blue works exactly the same way as all the other phases. You're going to activate all your cards. Now blue cards, most of them are just points. Alright, you're going to go to the bottom right and you're just going to score those amount of points. Now some of them have special abilities to score points. This is for every set you're going to get something. Some of them you need to pay to get a certain points. So you're going to activate all those cards during that scoring phase. Alright, and then after the blue phase, you're going to do the red noble phase, and this is exactly the same thing as the blue phase. So 3 steps like usual. Fill up the display up to 10 cards. So here we carried over 4 cards, so we're only going to put in 6 cards. Alright, second is in turn order. So starting with the person with the noble token here, you're going to buy cards, do your actions, the 4 different actions, and when everyone passes, then you're going to move on to the scoring of red. So now red, you know, very similar to blue and green cards. It's actually sort of a mixture of the two. You're gonna have certain cards that have just money, certain cards that have money and points, and then there's other ones that are just points. All right, and you're gonna score those exactly like you would every other phased color. Alright, and the last phase before the end of the round is called the exchange phase, and this uses this special upgrade deck on the side of the board. So for this one, you're only going to do 2 steps and not 3. You're not going to be doing the scoring at the end of this phase, and that's because all the 3 different colored cards are represented in this deck. So there's green, blue, and red cards in here. So the 2 steps, like usual, the first one is fill up the display to 10 cards. I've already done that. So there was 4 cards carried over. I brought over 6 cards. The only way to tell that these are upgrade cards, there's 2 ways really, besides the back of the card, is that there's a red square that goes around the number. Okay. So in this case here, I have 6 of these upgrade cards. All right. So that's step 1, filling up the display. Step 2, doing your actions. Now, when buying an upgrade card, very important rules. These are not the same as regular cards. These need to be overlaid on top of previous cards in your tableau. So for example, if I really wanted this card, I wouldn't be able to actually build it in my tableau because I don't have any other blue cards that I can build on top of. All right, so I wouldn't be able to have this card, but I can still take this card to my hand. But I'll show you with an example. Let's say I really wanted to play this character here. Now this character, I can overlay on top of this character and have the ability at the bottom. So you're basically replacing the card. Now the cost to get the card down is the difference between this card and the card you're overlaying. So in this scenario here, I would only have to pay $4 into the general supply, play this card on top, and I'm basically changing the ability of this card from 4 and 1 point to $3 and 3 points. All right, so in the future in red phase, I'm now going to get $3 and 3 points. All right, and that's how all these upgrade cards work. You're overlaying on top of other cards in your tableau. Now, some very important rules when doing so. First, you cannot overlay an upgrade card on top of another upgrade card. So let's say I had another red card for whatever reason. You can't overlay a red card on top of another red card. An upgrade card on top of another upgrade card. All right, second is that just for the green cards, the worker actually matters. All right, so let's say these two cards were in my tableau and I wanted to upgrade with this card. Well, I couldn't because this is a weaving expert here and I don't have this red icon in my display, but I would be able to take this character here because this is a gold smelter which uses gold icon, and I can upgrade on top of this character here because it's the same icon. So in this scenario here, I would pay $2 and overlay this card on top of this card. All right. Now, third rule is in the game we are collecting these market tokens in the top right. If you ever lose a card or overlay on top of a market bonus that you would have got in the past, well, then you're going to go back down in the track. So if I lay a card on top of this one and I lose this icon, well, I'm going to lose my apple on the track wherever I was. So let's say if green was here, overlay on top of this, well, then green will lose his apple status, let's just say. All right, and that's what you're going to be doing with the exchange cards. They're essentially the same thing, they just have to be laid on top. Now, the only special card that deals with overlaying that happened in the previous sections that I really didn't talk about would be the Potemkin village here. All right, so for this one, this is a very special card and it's only used for upgrading. All right, so for this one, to play this card in your tableau, it will cost you only 2. All right, but when you overlay a card on top, it is actually represented by a 6. All right, so in the future, for example, I would put this card in my tableau for 2, but then if I wanted to build this 18 upgrade card on top, well, now the difference in cost would only be 12 and not 16. All right, so I would overlay this on top, and now I would have a savings of $4 every time I would use this card. All right, so after the exchange phase, if you didn't trigger the end of the game, well, then you're gonna go through the end of round phase. All right, you're gonna do 2 things, pretty simple. First, you're gonna move all the cards that are currently in the display down. All right, the cards that are down here, as you can see, they all cost 1 less in future rounds. All right, but they still count towards the display of 10. So when you need to add 10 cards at the start of the next round, well, if there's already 3 out there, you're only adding 7 more cards. Or you're going to be adding 5 if you're playing on the other side of the board. All right, the second thing you're going to do is everyone's going to take their current wooden tokens and they're going to pass it to the next player on the left. So if you were holding 2 of them, both of them are going to go to the person on your left. If you're holding only one's going to go to the person on your left, and the person to your right is going to give you whatever tokens he has. So it's going to shuffle up the order of who is going first in every single phase on the following round. Alright, and finally, after the exchange phase, if the end game was triggered, well, then you're going to go to end game scoring. So remember, if one of these decks, any of the decks run out after the exchange phase, straight to end game scoring, and you're going to add 3 things to your final score. So you're going to be somewhere on the point track and you're going to do 3 things. Alright, first, any cards that you have left in your hands. Remember, you have a hand limit. Any card you have left in your hand, you'll lose 5 points per card. Alright, next, for every $10 you have left in your possession, you're going to gain a point. You round down. So if you have 22 coins, you'll make 2 points. All right, don't worry about this. This is going to be in the modules. I'm going to talk about modules in the following section. And then finally, what you're going to do is you're going to count all the unique nobles you have in your tableau. So no doubles, the unique ones. And you're going to score that many points. So if I had 8 unique nobles, so red cards in my tableau, I'm going to score 36 points on the point track. You do those 3 things. See who has the most points, and whoever has the most is going to win the game. All right, so the modules are going to come up in a couple seconds, but if you don't want to see that, I hope you enjoyed it. Click the link below if you want to see my review and playthrough video. All right, so there are 6 different modules, as you can see here, that they have in the base box to add some variety into the base game if you need a bit more complexity. All right, so let's go through each of these modules one by one. We'll go over the rules and how to set it up and all that stuff. All right, so the first module is by far the simplest. All right, it is just more cards, and they are all mostly these purple action cards. All right, these ones act the same way. You'll just draft it for 0. They must be the first cards you add to your hands. Once they go to your hand on a future turn, not the turn that you take the card, you can play the card, act its power, throw it into the discard pile, and move on. All right. Also, you cannot take a purple card if you don't have room in your hand to pick it up. All right. So that's the first module. You can play with this deck on either side of the board. All right. Second module works pretty much the exact same way, but these are pretty much just regular cards. Just add a bit more variety because they all have special abilities at the bottom here. For this one, again, you can play on either side of the board. Just throw these into the regular decks, add a bit more complexity, and there you go. All right, the third module here are called the assistants. All right, so this one you can play with either side of the board if you take out the yellow card. All right, this is the only requirement to have on the market side up, but if you're not playing with the market side up, just throw this back in the game box and play with the other 4. But essentially what you're going to do is at the start of the game, you're going to hand out one of these to each player. You're going to have to look at the rulebook because depending on the player count, you are playing with specific ones. So I believe in a 2-player game, you're playing with the green and red or something like that. And essentially when you have this in front of you, you're going to get a discount whenever you play one of those colored cards in front of you in your tableau. And there you go. So they're pretty simple. At the end of a round during the reset phase after the exchange, not only are you passing along your tokens like you were before, but you are also going to pass along your assistants that you have to the next player. All right, after that we have the events module over here. All right, so for these ones, for setup, really simple. You're just going to display all 6 of these cards on the side of the board. All right, and these are events that a player can use during their turn. And you know, the way it works is, I'm just going to play it here, for example, is each player is only allowed to activate one event in the game. All right, and to show that you've activated the event, after you activate the event, you'll take the card and you'll place it in front of you, sort of signaling that you can't play another event card. All right, and how you play an event card is before doing your action on any turn, you'll just take the card that you want to enact, you're going to do the ability, play it in front of you, and that's it. All right, they each have a special ability. You can read them. Some of them take cards from the discard, moving cards around, get a discount, getting some money, so on, so on, and so on. All right, so that's the 4th module. All right, the 5th module is probably my favorite module. These are end game scoring cards. All right, so give this a good shuffle. At the start of the game, what you're going to do is you're going to give 3 to every single player. All right, they're going to look at them and they're going to keep them for now. So you're going to play the game as usual, and these are end game scoring bonuses that you're trying to achieve, right? Because they're going to score you extra points at the end of the game. All right, that's the signal right over here. So you see your assignment cards are going to score extra points. All right, but a couple of notes on this. During the game, you're going to dwindle these 3 down to 1. And how you do that is when you hit the 20-point marker on the board here, you're going to discard one of the cards. And when you hit 35 points, you're going to discard another card. All right, so after you pass 35, you're only going to have 1 card left, and that's the one you're trying to achieve for the end of the game. All right, just go look at the modules for some examples on how some of these score, but they're all just end game things. All right, and the last module is called the obstacles. All right, there's 2 kinds of obstacles. There's the real obstacles and the bonus obstacles. So what you're supposed to do, all right, I'm going to say supposed to do, is you're going to shuffle the bonus ones. You're going to take 3, and you're going to place 1 at the 10 space, 1 at the 50 space, and 1 at the 70 space. All right, so these are pretty simple. When your score marker hits the bonus tile, you're gonna get the bonus. All right, so just read the book, what the bonus is. Usually you just get extra coins for type of cards or extra points, so on and so on. All right, so those are the bonus ones. Now the real obstacles, what I would suggest is never play with this module because it's garbage. But what you're supposed to do is take 2 of them, right? And you're gonna put 1 at the 20 and 1 at the 35. All right, and what these do is you're basically, your point scoring pawn cannot pass these obstacles unless you fulfill the obstacle, and that's just garbage. Don't play with this module. It sort of forces you to pick up specific cards. I don't like it. I'm not going to talk more about it. All right, so those are all the modules. You know, if I were to suggest to you which ones you should use, you know, the extra cards I would throw in all the time in a 4 and 5 player game. Don't do it in a 2 and 3 player game. It makes the game a bit too long because you are adding more cards. The assistants, pretty boring. Don't have to play with those. The events are pretty good. The end game objectives, I love. Play with them every single time. Sometimes I even hand out 4 to every player, so we have 2 to try to achieve. And the obstacles, throw in the bonus ones. but not the real obstacles. All right, so those are all the modules. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.